Welcome to week 4 of our chronological Bible study. We're covering day 19 through day 27 in this video. That's January 19th through January 27th. We're at about 1800 BC, so we're still during the Patriarch Era. We've quit moving forward on our horizontal timeline, so time has stopped moving and we are interjecting a story into that horizontal timeline. So time has stopped. We are covering just a story that takes place during that time, and then when we finish the book of Job, we're going to pick back up with Exodus and continue time moving forward. Job 1:1 says, "There once was a man named Job who lived in the land of Uz." So Genesis 10 that we already read, that's page 17 of your chronological study Bible. Genesis 10 tells us that Uz descends from Aram, Aram descending from Shem. And if Uz descended from Aram and Job is living in the kingdom of Uz, or is living in the land of Uz, that would also mean that he's probably in the land of Aram, which would be up here. Another view, aside from that one, is that Job might be Jobab, who is a descendant of Esau, from Genesis chapter 36, verse 33, which is on page 49 of your chronological study Bible. And if he was a descendant of Esau, if Job is actually Jobab, the descendant of Esau, he would be down here in the kingdom of Edom. To better understand the location of Uz and where Job is living, we can take into context Eliphaz the Temanite and Bildad the Shuhite. Now if we trace the genealogy, remember I spoke last week about the ites, following the first part of the ites. So a Temanite, the first part of the ite is Timon. And if we go back to the genealogy of Timon, Timon was actually Esau's grandson in Genesis 36 verse 11. His father's name was Eliphaz. And this person, this friend of Job that is here, is named Eliphaz the Temanite, which wouldn't be the actual Eliphaz that Timon came from, but it would be someone that was named after that original Eliphaz, who is a descendant of Timon, who is a Temanite. And that just so happens, being that he was a descendant of Esau, kind of points down towards the kingdom of Edom in the south. Likewise, Bildad the Shuhite, one of the other characters in the book of Job, after Sarah died, he had another wife named Keturah, and her son that she had with Abraham was named Shua, and that's where the word Shuhite comes from. And this is someone named Bildad, who is a Shuhite that descends from Shua, which very easily could have lived also in that area of Edom. Zophar the Naamathite, the origin of the name Nama is uncertain. The only thing we can really come up with is the name Nama was a descendant of Cain, but Nama was wiped out in the flood. So that's not likely. This is just an old name in there. But two of the three ites, the Temanite, the Shuhite, and the Naamathite, two out of the three most likely live in the land of Edom. So that most likely puts the place where Job is living somewhere down in the kingdom of Edom rather than in the kingdom of Aram. Although Genesis 10 tells us that Uz descends from Aram, which would put him up here. If we take it in the context of Eliphaz and Bildad, both living in the land of Edom, that probably places Job somewhere down here. Obviously, Job is a righteous man. We also know during this time frame we have people like Melchizedek in Genesis 14, who was the king of Salem and a priest of the Most High God. Priests normally have congregants, people that they are priests for. And Melchizedek was a priest of the Most High God in a very early time. We're talking about Genesis 14. We're talking about when Abraham was Abram, like before he was even Abraham. There was still a priest of the Most High God, being the God. We also know that God spoke to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. He spoke to Noah way back when. And we know that Enoch also walked very closely with God, so closely that he didn't actually die. He was taken up into heaven. So we know that people during these early years, not all people, had a very close relationship with God and were even priests during this time. So that would put Job as one of those people who is very close to God, who has knowledge of God, has knowledge of God's ways. So we know that people during the creation era and the Patriarch era, there are some people who have a very close relationship with God, who have a good knowledge of God and His ways. In verse 1, after we are introduced to Job and where he's from, we're told that he was blameless, a man of complete integrity. He feared God and stayed away from evil. He had 7 sons, 3 daughters. He owned a bunch of sheep, a bunch of camels, oxen, donkeys. He also had many servants. He was, in fact, the richest person in that entire area. The theory that Job might actually be Jobab, the king of Edom, a descendant of Esau during that time from Genesis 36, may be plausible here. Also, the fact that Eliphaz and Bildad are Edomites also gives credit to this specific view. Job's sons would take turns preparing feasts in their homes. They would also invite their 3 sisters to celebrate with them. When these celebrations ended, sometimes after several days, Job would purify his children. Just in case they did something wrong, he would purify them, offer sacrifice. He said to himself, "Perhaps my children have sinned and have cursed God in their hearts." So he did this as a regular practice, just in case his children did something. Verse 6. One day, the members of the heavenly court, the New Living Translation says, this is also in most other of your word-for-word translations, like your Legacy Standard Bible, your King James, this is sons of God. Now, if you remember back to Genesis 6, when we talked about the sons of God lying with the daughters of men, and this created this hybrid people named the Nephilim, or Nephilim, we know that these are the sons of God. Maybe not the same specific sons of God, but these are the same kind of beings, Job tells us. They came to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser, Satan, came with them. We have the idea that Satan was an angel at one point in time, a very powerful angel, and he rebelled against God, and we know so far from our reading he was already on earth before Adam and Eve arrived there. So God asks Satan, he says, "Where have you come from?" Verse 7, "Where have you come from?" the Lord asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, "I have been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on." I like the Legacy Standard Bible translation here. Satan says, "From roaming about on the earth and walking around on it." God's the only one that's all the time around us, everywhere. But Satan does go back and forth through the earth, patrolling, seeing who he can lead astray. And that's what Satan's saying here. Verse 8, "Then the Lord asked Satan, 'Have you noticed my servant Job? He's the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil.' Satan replied to the Lord, 'Yes, but Job has good reason to fear God. You have always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property. You have made him prosper in everything he does. Look how rich he is. But reach out and take away everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face.'" So here Satan is saying, yeah, he fears you because he knows you are protecting him. And because you're protecting him, he fears losing that protection that you have. So of course he fears you, and that's why he's blameless. Take away your protection, and we'll see if he's still blameless. Verse 12, "All right, you may test him," the Lord said to Satan. "Do whatever you want with everything he possesses, but don't harm him physically." So Satan left the Lord's presence. And then one day, when Job's sons and daughters were feasting at their older brother's house, a messenger arrived at Job's home with this news: "Your oxen were plowing with the donkeys, feeding beside them, when the Sabians raided us. They stole all the animals and killed all the farm hens. And I'm the only one who escaped to tell you." So they stole all of his beasts of burden and his farmers. He's attacked his means to produce food, his means to produce something to sell as well. Verse 16, "While he was still speaking," so while the first messenger was still speaking, "another messenger arrived with news. The fire of God has fallen from heaven and burned up your sheep and all the shepherds. And I'm the only one who escaped to tell you." So now he's had not only his livestock and the means to grow those things taken, but now he's had his sheep, his food taken as well. While that second messenger was still speaking, a third messenger arrived with this news: 3 bands of Chaldean raiders Remember the Chaldeans, the Chaldeans, way over on the other side of the Fertile Crescent. Okay, the Chaldean raiders have stolen your camels and killed your servants. And I'm the only one who escaped to tell you. So now he's lost his transportation, his way to transport goods. He's lost his means to produce goods. He's lost his food source. And now he's lost his means of transportation and his way of transporting the goods to sell. Verse 18. While he was still speaking, another messenger arrived with this news. Your sons and daughters were feasting in their oldest brother's home. Suddenly a powerful wind swept in from the wilderness and hit the house on all sides. The house collapsed and all your children are dead. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. So now he's lost his own children. These children that he used to make just in case sacrifices for. Just so that he can ensure that they didn't have any sin against God. Verse 20. Job stood up and tore his robe in grief. And we'll see this throughout the Bible. Once they reach a point of being completely distraught, they'll tear their clothes. You've grieved me to a point of exhaustion. Then he shaved his head. This is also another sign of being grief-stricken. He's torn his clothes, shaved his head. He fell to the ground to worship. And he said, I came naked from my mother's womb. I will be naked when I leave. The Lord gave me what I had, and the Lord has taken it away. And the King James, we all have that verse memorized. The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away. The NLT says, praise the name of the Lord. We all know, blessed be the name of the Lord. The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. This is what Job says. He's lost everything. He's lost everything but his wife. He's lost his children. He's lost all of his means for providing for his family. And he says, blessed be the name of the Lord. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all of this is verse 22. In all of this, Job did not sin by blaming God. Chapter 2. One day, the members of the heavenly court, those sons of God, came again to present themselves before the Lord. And the accuser, Satan, came with them. Where have you come from? The Lord asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, I have been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on. Then the Lord asked Satan, have you noticed my servant Job? He's the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil. And he has maintained his integrity even though you urged me to harm him without cause. So God's saying like, see, you had Job all wrong, Lucifer. No, you got him all wrong. Verse 4. Satan replied to the Lord, skin for skin. A man will give up everything he has to save his life, but reach out and take away his health, and he will surely curse you to your face. All right, do with him as you please, the Lord said to Satan, but spare his life. So Satan left the Lord's presence, and he struck Job with terrible boils from head to foot. Job scraped his skin with a piece of broken pottery as he sat among the ashes. This is another common practice. Once they're to a point where they're completely humbled, and they would even sit in ashes to show humility. They would wear sackcloth and sit in ashes to show their humility. It's what Job's doing, but now he has these boils and these sores, and now he's opening them with these pottery sherds. Verse 9, his wife said to him, are you still trying to maintain your integrity? Curse God and die. Now, we always like to poke a finger at Job's wife here. And yes, she is being cruel. But she's just lost all of her children as well. She's lost 10 children. She's watched her husband lose, and she has lost as well everything that holds them up to their elevated position. They've lost all of their livestock, their means of carrying the grain and things that they produce, and they've lost their grain and the means of producing grain. So they've lost everything. And she's probably grief-stricken just like Job. She's just not afflicted physically the way that Job is. So she's probably grief-stricken here as well. She could be at a point where she's just totally like, I give up. Just there's nothing else for me. Let's just hang it up. this curse God, what would happen if Job cursed God? If he cursed God, then God would have something to blame him with and then die. So just give up everything. Give up everything you got. You might as well just hang it up, is I think more what she's saying. But Job replied, "You talk like a foolish woman. Should we accept only good things from the hand of God and never anything bad?" So in all this, Job said nothing wrong. This is where 3 of Job's friends show up. Verse 11, when 3 of Job's friends heard of the tragedy he had suffered, they got together and traveled from their homes to comfort and console him. Their names were Eliphaz the Temanite, we talked about him, a descendant of Teman, Bildad the Shuhite, a descendant of Shua, and Zophar the Naamathite, which we've not been able to trace the ite there. When they saw Job from a distance, they scarcely recognized him. So these are his friends. They didn't even recognize who he was. He looked so bad. Wailing loudly, they tore their robes and threw dust in the air over their heads to show their grief. So they're coming to grieve with him, and they're publicly grieving with him. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and nights. No one said a word to Job, for they saw that his suffering was too great for words. So this is how bad Job is. Job is so grief-stricken that they can see it on his face. They can see it on him physically. And they see that he's probably sitting there in tears, sobbing of the affliction that he's facing. And in all of that, he's not sinning. He's not turning against God. He's full of grief. He is afflicted to the highest amount, but he is maintaining his faith. What happens for the rest of our reading this week is this conversation that takes place between Job and these 3 friends. Friends, I say with quotations. I'm certain that you've dealt with grief in your life. You've been in a hard place, and then you've gotten around someone that maybe has not been through that, or someone that was trying to comfort you. They were really honestly trying to comfort you and give you godly advice, but it comes across just being kind of like cold, although they're trying to be warm. They might say things like, God won't give you more than you can handle. Well, yeah, that's a true statement, but that might not be exactly what I need to hear right now. And although none of the things that Eliphaz, Bildad, or Zophar say is necessarily wrong, they might not be what Job needs to hear in that moment. They might as well just like sat there and stayed quiet like they did the first 7 days they were there. But we go through this back and forth. Job finally speaks after 7 days. And paraphrasing, it's as if in chapter 3 Job says, "If this was your plan for me, God, why did you even allow for me to be born? I would rather never existed than to go through this pain that I'm in right now." Now that's a really profound statement. Have you ever been in a position where you thought it was the worst thing that could ever happen to you and there's no way out of the situation? The only way out of the situation is death. If you've been in this situation before, you can understand where Job is and how grief-stricken and how hopeless he is in this situation. Job's like, why did you even let me be born if you knew this is what was going to happen to me, all-knowing God? We've all asked that question, I think, at one point in time or another. In chapter 4, Eliphaz replied to that statement. He says, "You've lived a godly life. Will you lose faith now that you are in trouble? You must have committed some kind of evil that you're not aware of." He goes on in chapter 5. He lectures Job on the ways of God and grace. And he acts like Job doesn't know this. In chapter 6, Job says, "I'm suffering and you're not helping me. You're not helping me right now." In chapter 7, Job goes on and he cries out to God. He says, "Why are you unjustly punishing me?" Bildad in chapter 8 says, "Shut up. You must deserve this or it wouldn't be happening to you. Your children most definitely got what was coming to them since they all died. They obviously did something. You've been spared. You just need to repent. Everything will be okay. In chapter 9, Job replies, God is all powerful. He is so great that if I questioned him, I would be guilty by merely opening my mouth. So I have no right to question God. You see how faithful Job is still being, despite now he's not only been traumatized, now his friends are exacerbating his condition by these things that they are saying that they think is helping, or they are nice things to say to him, and that should lift him up or maybe motivate him to lift him up out of this condition, or repent in the right way so that God heals him. But he's telling them, look, you're not helping me, and if I was to question God, the minute I open my mouth, I would do something wrong, and I have not done anything wrong. So Job's maintaining his innocence in this whole thing. He says, I cannot argue with God. In chapter 10, Job turns around and he questions God. So he's finally got to the point. He talked himself into it. Chapter 11, Zophar, the other friend, he says, you should be ashamed. Turn to God and he will deliver you. Chapter 12, Job then replies, you guys think you know everything. Your shallow wisdom is useless. You're not helping me. I already know all these things that you're telling me. I know them. I know God. And I'm not losing my faith in all of this. You're the ones who are actually doing an evil here. Chapter 13 and 14, Job goes on, and he says, God hears you too, right now, and you will pay for tormenting me with your holier-than-thou attitude. Please, God, tell me what I have done to deserve this. Chapter 15, Eliphaz basically says, you're so stupid, and you have spoken just a bunch of empty words here. You resemble the godless. So Eliphaz doubles down now on his statement that you must have done something wrong. Like, now the things that you're doing, the things you're saying, you resemble the godless now. Job in chapter 16, he says, y'all keep saying the same thing, just be quiet. I liked you better the first 7 days you were here and you didn't say anything. There's nothing left for me. In chapter 17, Job says, despite all your accusations, I am innocent. I have lost hope. Now, how many times in your life have you lost hope but still kept your faith? And this is a hard thing to do, and this really shows the character of Job. Sometimes when we lose hope that a condition is going to get better, it coincides, almost always coincides with our loss of faith that things will work out, that God has our best interest at heart. That's not the case with Job. Job's lost his hope, definitely, but he's still faithful to the Lord. He's not doing anything wrong. Chapter 18, Bildad then says, you're the one who is speaking nonsense, not me. Job, we're trying to help you, but you're not helping yourself. Heard that one before. Chapter 19, Job replies, I've lost faith in you. You are only trouble to me now. I know my Redeemer lives. You should be the ones fearing punishment because of how y'all are behaving. Chapter 20, Zophar says, the wicked receive just punishment. 21, Job replies, my complaint is with God, because the wicked are not always punished for their deeds, but God is sovereign. So now Job he's starting to wonder why, that age-old question, why do bad things happen to good people, or why do good things happen to bad people? That's where Job's sitting at now. And Eliphaz says, you had to have done something deserving of this trial that you're enduring. Submit to God, and He will save you. In chapter 23, Job replies, I feel lost and abandoned by God. It feels like He is far from me. Lots of people have felt that before too. Well, if you haven't felt that before, you're blessed. Chapter 24, Job says, the wicked go unpunished, but they still go go to the grave. Everyone can be brought low. Bildad in chapter 25 says God is all powerful and beyond our understanding. He makes that statement. Duh. So chapters 26 through 31, Job finishes off. How have you helped me, or anyone for that matter? I am innocent. Wisdom is not among the living, because you're not demonstrating that now, friends. I used to enjoy the protection and prosperity given by God, but now I've been humbled and I am innocent. So he maintains his innocence through all of this. We're going to find out next week. His friends are actually the ones that get punished, and Job is actually going to be restored to his position. Job is going to be rewarded for his faith, even though he's reprimanded for losing his hope. He'll be rewarded for keeping his faith through all of that. Next week, a fourth person is introduced who has been sitting here silent and is named Elihu. He's the Buzite. Then, finally, God shows up and clears it all up for us. So very exciting. I know it was a short video this week. We've had lots of long ones, so this is a short one. Take your time reading Job and going through those responses that the friends give Job. There's a lot of truth in there. Just like you may have tried to comfort a friend before, or maybe you've encountered someone at church or someone in Sunday school and you've shared some kind of grievance with them and they've given you that blanket statement, kind of like, yeah, but God's got it all in the bag. God's got it all. And then it didn't necessarily help you in that situation like they intended for it to. That's kind of what's going on here. Next week, you'll see God's response to all that, and it's very exciting about the outcome of this story. All right, so we'll see you next week.